ladies and gentlemen, please welcome all of the candidates for the seat of New England. Well, round of applause for them. They are the sitting member, Barnaby Joyce, representing the National Party.
I'm at the house.
Adam Blakester, who is the independent in the region. Yvonne Lannenberg from the Australian Labor Party.
Hey.
Tony Longren, who is the Green. And Cindy Duncan from the United Australia Party. Now, first things first, I want to say to all of you, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate that. For some, it may not be considered a friendly room, but you've got the balls to be here, and that is something you've got on many of your colleagues in different states. So I do appreciate all of that. Here's the rules for the pub test. The questions do not come from me. They come from the people of New England. I have no idea what they are going to ask, and all I ask is that everyone gets the chance to have their say. We'll try and we will keep the answers to 45 seconds each. If you want to pick each other up, that's fine and fair enough, but it's about getting through as many questions as possible and giving you the chance all to speak directly to the people who matter, who aren't me, to the people who you want to vote for you. Let's bring one down. Hello, mate, what's your name?
Shane.
Hello, Shane. What's your question, mate?
My question would be, what are each of the candidates prepared to do to improve the economy of the local towns in the New England area, Inverell, Tenterfield, Armidale, Tamworth, so on and so forth? But more specifically, what are they prepared to do regarding funding of a proposed abattoir for Guyra in New South Wales that will create 200 jobs and 400 jobs during construction?
All right, let's get specific to the abattoir. Barnaby.
OK, the abattoir, I know it's something you've been pursuing, and also Rob Tabor. The issue there, of course, is we have to get money from the government, probably from Building Better Regions funding. We've also had the National Regional Growth Fund in the past. To drive jobs in the New England, you must have new water infrastructure, you must have affordable power, and you must have the infrastructure such as the roads and the rail and the air to connect us up. We are a growing economy, we are a growing area, but we have to put more investment, and that's why we've got $75 million on the table for further water infrastructure in Tamworth. And if we hadn't extended Chaffey Dam here in Tamworth, this city would have run out of water.
Okay, let's keep rolling down the desk.
I've met you before, and it sounds like a very exciting, actually, project for our region. I'm really excited to hear about rail, that we need rail, because part of the things that we need in New England is good infrastructure, not only NBN that is working, but certainly road and rail, and I'm really think that that would help your business. I know that you've been looking at funding, and yes, as Barnaby says, that would have to come from rural, from infrastructure, different entities. But money is there. Money is always there. It's just a will.
Okay, keep going down the table, and you can push back in a second.
It's good to hear about a proposal for that project for Guyra, and the smaller towns are as key as the major centres. There's opportunities in the region around future of farming. This drought will break eventually, and we have the opportunity in regen ag, smart ag, intensification of agriculture like the tomato farm there. So to tourism, regionalisation and attracting more business and population shift to the region. And I think all of that bodes well for the abattoir particularly.
Hi, Shane. For your question, I'll address the abattoir one first. I originally grew up in Wollongara. There were 2 abattoirs there within 15 miles each, Anderson and Riverston. I believe that we can privatise and have these back. As to how we will fix the economy, I believe if we decentralise the country, New England, rural and regional areas, and we have an incentive of zonal taxation, which is 20% less tax in regional areas, I think that would improve the situation greatly.
Right. Tony, about the abattoir, how do you feel about it?
I'm a cattle farmer, and when the Aberdeen meatworks closed down, we were lucky to be able to fall back on the Scone meatworks. It's a serious problem when you've got to transport your cattle long distances. It's already difficult enough to make a living in cattle. So I think that's fantastic. But I think in general, we have to make sure that going into the future, all our industries are based on sustainability. I know there's a serious drought in New England at the moment. I drove up to Tenterfield last week, and that's going to be an ongoing challenge. The weather we've been getting, I think climate change is going to feed into that, and I think that's just undeniable. We have to deal with that issue.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, mate. Is there a comment you wanted to make?
I just wanted to say that the government's continually saying that they need to push the population from the major centres to the regions. They won't do it unless there's jobs. You've got to get jobs. If you want jobs, you've got to have manufacturing. Manufacturing, like an abattoir, is vital for somewhere like Gaia in this New England area. That's all I'm saying. Whoever wins, I just hope that we can work with you and try and get that funding, because it's important to this region.
Good on you, mate. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's get another one in here. Hello, what's your name?
Liz.
Hello, Liz. Thank you for coming along. What's your question tonight?
If you were elected as the member for New England, what is your stand on the live export trade?
Okay. Barnaby?
Well, I believe the live export trade is fundamentally important to underpin the value of sheep. I know that I was derided as the minister because I tried to drive it to make it as big as possible. Where the live sheep trade goes is where the live cattle trade will go. The live cattle trade is vitally important, not only for the underpinning the price of cattle and getting the best return back through the farm gate, but also maintaining our good relationship with Indonesia. And where the live sheep trade goes and the live cattle trade goes, so will the transport industry go. And without a transport industry, road transport industry, regional areas would be decimated. So we have to understand that it mightn't be politically popular, but it's so economically fundamentally important, not just for Tamworth, but for southwest Western Australia, for Western New South Wales, Western Queensland, and go to the sale yards and see what happened once they got rid of the live cattle trade.
Yvonne?
The live export trade really needs to be phased out, and especially with the sheep. But it is a matter of phasing it out. It's not an issue of just stopping it tomorrow, because clearly it will affect some people. But certainly transport of sheep in a northern summer, that just doesn't work. No matter whether you have air-conditioned ships, it just doesn't work. Live export trade does need to be phased out.
What's your view on it?
I think if they ban the live export trade, agriculture in Australia will die.
Okay, all right. Well, let's keep going down the table here. What do you think, Adam?
So as an independent, the policy platform I've been putting together has had input from the electorate, so it's the electorate's views rather than mine. This issue's popped up a couple of times, but it hasn't come up as a major issue as yet. So you're raising it, which is good.
But if you had to vote, what would you vote? I mean, if you were going to be in Parliament?
I'd take further advice from the electorate. What I am hearing, though, around agriculture...
How would you do it? Just out of interest, I'm not prosecuting, just asking. How would you do that? How would you propose to get a genuine sample, not just the people willing to click on a website, the people willing to turn up to a forum? How would you get a genuine view?
So we're looking at setting up policy forums around the major priorities for the electorate, similar to what Cathy McGowan has done in Indi. And agriculture would be one of those, unequivocally. What I am hearing is opportunities around value added. So how do we value add and not just be commodity sellers, but actually have value added products so that we're creating more employment here and getting more economic value back into the region? And that's what I'm hearing so far around specialised ag. So I'm open to take advice on live export. It's a given that it has to look after animal welfare. We've seen some disasters in live export. It's tarnished the whole reputation of that. And that happened at a time when the Department of Ag had no regulatory oversight.
But just out of interest, you have the government wishing to continue the trade, but with regulation. Labor says phase out the trade. Which of those two positions do you like?
So this is an election. We don't have a government. We're in caretaker mode at the moment. So the outgoing government has a view.
Come on. You've got to...
No, the outgoing government has a view, and now we're going into an election.
So what's your view?
See what the parliament makeup is in the next government.
OK, well, the funny thing is, we can do this all night, OK? And I've got a whole second hour, so let's actually get to an answer. Would you phase out or keep or ban live exports?
As I said, I would bring that. If that was an issue that came through loud and clear in this electorate, I'd canvass that with the electorate.
You have no opinion on it?
That hasn't happened yet.
But you have no opinion on it?
No, well, I haven't canvassed the electorate.
What's your view?
I agree with Barnaby Joyce. I believe that we have to continue with our live exports and with regulation on top of it. But we need to continue this. We have cattlemen, we have herders, and that's their lifestyle. And it continues to be one of our biggest exports. We can't just do away with it. But it has to be done regularly. You know, you've got to follow the rules.
Tony, how do you feel about live export?
Ban live export trade. I've been in Dubai in the summer. I know what the temperature is like. We also saw those images on of the ship and the disaster of thousands of animals just in disgusting conditions. New Zealand had banned their live exports many years ago. They process the animals in New Zealand and export meat, and that's what I would be doing.
All right, thank you very much. Do appreciate it. All right, we'll keep on going, and if there's no answer, I'll keep banging away, and whoever chooses not to, you'll get the same treatment. Hello, mate. What's your name?
David.
Hello, David. What do you want to ask?
Given the perilous supply of water in the Peel Valley and the northwest, what plans have you to rectify this in the future?
All right, let's start with you, Yvonne.
Could I just get a repeat of it?
About water, with the perilous supply of water in the northwest, what's the Labor Party plans?
It's a bit of a mess, the whole water thing. Lots of innuendo, lots of stories, but really water, talking about the Murray-Darling Basin, the authority has been undermined by stories. Labor will have a Royal Commission type inquiry, so the population can actually feel whether something untoward happened or not. So it's not saying that anything did, but certainly it needs to be investigated. So we are confident that the authority did its job, and if it didn't do its job, why not? And what can be rectified about it? So water is a huge issue. We cannot survive without water. We cannot survive without taking care of our water and taking care of our entire huge Murray-Darling Basin. Murray-Darling Basin.
Okay. Tony, your thoughts?
We're entering a water-constrained world, there's no question about that. It's going to get hotter, there's going to be longer droughts. We've got to start using water as a more precious resource and not wasting it. We've got to manage our river systems more efficiently. We've also got to keep them alive. We can't have just dead zones right throughout our river systems. We have to remember that we live in an ecosystem. We have to keep nature around us alive. We have to live within our limits ecologically. I think there's a case for people using in urban areas for, I'm not sure of the economies of scale, but for recycling water. We have to be careful of, well, I think we shouldn't be, coal seam gas, I think, has a devastating effect on, or potentially devastating effect on groundwater. And the coal industry uses huge amounts of water and what's planned at Shenhua is really concerning.
Okay. Cindy, and then we'll keep moving up the table.
I believe the water today has been mismanaged. Having said that, we are overpopulated for the water supply that we have today. We have the dams of, say, 30% less of population. So the only alternative that we have got is to build interconnecting dams with pipelines.
All right. Adam?
So we've got issues, picking up on what Tony said, we need to work within the available water supply. We've got a water budget. That budget's becoming more constrained with climate change, increasing droughts and the heat waves that we're having as well. We need to sort out water governance. We've got serious questions around water buybacks, around what's led to the collapse of the Murray-Darling Basin. Commissioner McKelty, who's only just begun work on the Northern Basin, has identified that there are interests left, right and centre, vested interests playing out in decisions around water, so we need to have proper governance and accountability around that, and we need the best science to be able to monitor and utilise water in the best possible ways. At the moment, of course, we need rain, and until that comes, we need to tighten our belts.
Is that anyone's policy for more rain? Barnaby?
Well, I'll try and be more succinct. I think we need more dams. We've extended Chaffey Dam. If we hadn't did that, this city would be out of water. We've got $75 million on the table for further water infrastructure. I think the nation has to be visionary to take on a major water infrastructure project, such as the Bradfield scheme, moving water from the north of our nation to the south of our nation. And it's so good for people to hear that in other areas, because there's a cynicism that's out there. If we had that same cynicism, we would never have built the Harbour Bridge, we would never have put in the NBN, we would never have built a road, we would never have done anything. And I think this is now the time for the nation to take the next major step. And if this was an election about issues such as that, by gosh, it'd be vastly more interesting.
You're a big Radfields man?
The only two positives I got out of that, one mate wants to recycle water and the current member wants to bring water in and build new dams. That's the boy we want. We need more water. We're desperate.
All right, appreciate it, mate. Thank you. We're going to take another quick break here in Tamworth. Plenty more to fire up about in a moment or two's time. Lots of questions and plenty more with our candidates here on Paul Murray Live, only on Sky News and Sky News on Win, live around the New England and around the country. They've been clapping through the entire break. God love Tamworth. Bit of showbiz for everyone there. We're here in conversation with the people who would like to represent the wonderful area of New England here after the federal election. Barnaby Joyce is the sitting member and National Party MP. Yvonne is with the ALP. Tony's with the Greens. Cindy's with the UAP. And Adam is the Independent. I'll go last names for everyone in a second. I just was trying to be informal. Hello, what's your name or what question do you have for the whole panel?
I'm Maggie and I'm a member of the transport industry. 2016, we had to fight. The Coalition helped us do it and we got rid of the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal, which Labor and our former Independent helped set up. What are you guys going to do to protect our family businesses? We're a single truck operation and there's a lot of us that have families, and under that tribunal, people that had father, son, daughters, etc., driving their own trucks were a target of the unions and this tribunal. What are you going to do if they want to bring that back? Are you going to stick up for us again?
Right, Adam, I'll start with you. What's your view of either that tribunal, how it works, how it's worked for the single truckies, single operators in this area?
Yeah, look, what's come through that I think is relevant is regulation. Small business, medium-sized business is the engine room of our economy. Overwhelmingly, big business are tiny in number, and there's only 4 large businesses of that scale in this electorate. So it's the small businesses that are so key. And there's this spaghetti junction of regulation. We think we have 3 layers of government, but we actually have even more with other regulatory bodies. And I'm hearing time and time again the confusion and conflicts between those layers of government and regulation has a real cost to business. So whatever I could do to clarify that, sort that out, and I know I'm not the only one that thinks that time has come for an upgrade of our governmental system to be a lot more efficient.
So you're going to stick it up the unions, are you?
I don't think I used the word union.
No, the unions are the basis of trying to get rid of the smaller operators and supporting the larger operators.
I don't think I said anything like that.
No, but I'm telling you what...
She was asking you.
Oh, you're telling me what is in my mind?
What the story is,
okay.
yeah.
Wow, clever.
That's what happens.
All right.
Sorry, is there a history between you two I'm not aware of?
I'm starting to wonder.
Okay, or you could just answer a question. Yvonne?
I'm just recently a small business owner as well, and I know it's a balance about all of the costs and all of the regulations. In the trucking industry, you also are on our road, so it is really about regulation, which regulation is necessary to keep drivers safe, to keep your businesses viable. Please keep on talking with us because it's not going to help to have small businesses like yours go down the gurgler. Our nation is driven on small businesses.
How much more regulation do you want to put on our industry? Because we're very heavily regulated. We're one of the heaviest in the country. And we do the right thing.
And part of that would be because you are on roads that you share with amateur drivers, if you will. So there is amongst people, there's an expectation that there are regulations for safety for drivers, the truck drivers, and safety of actually other road users. But most certainly, what I'm hearing from you is that you feel that there's not much conversation happening. You're not being heard. So certainly, as a candidate, I want to hear your story, and I want to hear what you have got to really say about this.
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. Mr. Joyce.
I've probably got an unfair advantage because I was at the middle of this fight trying to make sure what the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal did is it basically said, if you take a load down to Melbourne, then they will determine the price for taking a backload back, even if it's only half a backload. And this made a lot of small operators unviable. It helped the big operators because they could always organise backloads, and the big operators would work with big unions to push mum and dad operators out of business. Now, you can't have that. We must have small business. Now, what Adam said and what you've just said is small business is the cornerstone, but to do that, you've got to not regulate small business out of business. And you've got to say, look, they are running their own business. If they get a backload, let them get the backload, stay out of their business and keep the mum and dad operators on the road.
Right. Tony Lonergan, what's your view and what's the Greens' view about this situation?
The Greens have a strong record of supporting legislation against large corporations using their market share to unfairly take advantage of small business. The Greens, can't think of the name of the inquiry, 2015, Labor Party opposed it, the Abbott government opposed it, the Greens supported it right from the beginning. The Tamworth government finally enacted that. Do you know what it's called, Barnaby? Can't remember. Section 44. But the Greens support small business, especially against the pressure that large companies can bear on those unfair advantages that can bring to bear on those small businesses.
All right, Cindy, what's the United Australia Party's view?
I must be missing a class here. The last time I heard, it was Bill Shorten backing the unions who wanted loan businesses, driving trucks, out of business. They didn't want them on the road. It was just simply big business. So unless you vote Labor out, I don't know what you're going to do.
Right.
Because
appreciate it. I want to move on, but yet one last comment.
One correction, sir, the Greens. In 2016, Richard Di Natale was backing Labor and the unions to keep the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal going and targeting whatever sector of the industry that they wanted.
OK, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's keep moving on here. Remember, the joy of the pub test is I have no idea what's about to be asked. We'll try and push them for an answer. Hello, what's your name and what do you want to ask?
My name's Carolyn and I would like to ask about water. There have been calls from some sections of farmers to be charged for water that falls on their land from the rain, especially when the drought breaks, and which is a bit rich because farmers are already doing it tough at the moment. I know firsthand, being farmer's daughter. And just wanted to know what your positions are, whether, because I don't think it's right farmers should be charged for rain that falls on their land. If they're using town water or council water, yep, but not on their own, in their own dams.
Tony, what do you think?
You're being charged for water in your dams?
I don't know what that means, to be honest.
I have dams. I don't understand what
There is calls by certain sections of the community to charge farmers for water that falls on their own lands.
OK, so it's an idea, not a policy that exists now. Would you agree or disagree with the idea of this?
That you be charged for water that falls on your land?
I think we're in a world of confusion here.
No, I'm sorry.
Certainly from me.
Someone else answer it. I could maybe...
OK.
I don't get the question.
Barnaby, if you want to.
OK, look, you've got to be a little bit cautious because on all overland flow, if you said all the water that falls on my land can be held by me, then obviously that could completely destroy the water catchment area. I think there is a balancing act, though. I think where we're now moving towards is too much regulation on what happens on your farm. And it's not just water regulation, it might be fishing regulations where they say, oh, you can't build a dam there because of a fishing regulation, when it's a gully that's never had a fish in its life. I think the big thing that farmers worry about is this move, this socialist move, that private assets that they have paid for become owned by the government. And the classic one is, if the Labor Party gets in, they will go into vegetation management and say the asset that you paid for, that you pay the rates on, that you pay the PI insurance on, is no longer yours. It's now vested in the government without any payment. And if you take an asset off the individual, vested in the government without payment, that is socialism. Socialism leads to communism. Communism leads to complete anarchy. And we've got to call it for what it is, because if they're not just doing it there, they're also doing it with your franking credits, taking money out of your superannuation. They're doing it with your negative gearing, and the next thing they want to do it with your motor vehicles. It is the most socialist government we will ever have.
Yvonne, I do want to ask you to respond, particularly about the vegetation stuff.
That was a bit of a passionate speech. We went from socialism, which is about the social good, right to anarchy, which is really communism actually got in there as well. I was really on this political journey there. I thought, no.
What about the vegetation stuff?
With water on your dams, I find it really quite hard to believe, because we are really very much into having farms drought-proof themselves, and that is a whole raft of issues on how you actually drought-proof yourself. So charging you for your water? No, that does. But as Barney was saying, it also has to do with flow, with actually water flow. We don't want to own your vegetation. The issue about vegetation is it's a balance. It's a balance into what actually supports our biodiversity, but also the farmers, I find most farmers are quite passionate about their land care. They're actually very passionate about looking after their land. So, no, the only thing that we'd be there is to support farmers, take care of their land, because that's what farmers do.
All right. No disrespect to Adam and Cindy, but I'm going to move on to another question, and you get the first bite at whether the next question is. Thank you. Come on down. Hello, what's your name?
Sarah.
Hello, Sarah. Step right up to the mark here. Give me an idea. What's your question? You started off with Adam or Cindy, and then we'll go up and down the panel.
Well, my question I had has actually already been asked. So obviously it's a very important issue in this rural and regional electorate. We elect people to make the hard decisions for the betterment of people like you and I, because as a mass we cannot make them. Realistically, it's not practical to survey the entire electorate every time you have to vote in Canberra. You say all your policies can be found on your website, but this one is missing. Before we vote, tell the electorate, what is your stance, yes or no, on the live export trade?
Adam? Adam?
I don't have a policy on it.
Beg your pardon?
Don't have a policy on it.
Don't have a yes or no about it?
Nope. And I'm not aware, is there legislation going to the Parliament to outlaw it?
Yes. Labor legislation is going to stop it. So I'd like to know,
But
as an independent, what is your policy?
Labor don't, they haven't formed government yet, unless we're jumping ahead and assuming they do.
Oh.
I'm interested, I don't want to be needlessly antagonistic, but I'm interested about why are you fairly evasive about this? Because the only reason I ask is, if the polls are correct, the Labor Party will form government. They will either form it with a majority or, potentially, there could be a minority and your vote may be required to either pass or negate a piece of legislation that is the winding down of the live export trade. It's not about trying to expose a position, it's just saying there's a very real decision you would have to make within the first 12 months of being the member for New England. That's why I'm so interested in it. That's why this lady's asking. But you're saying what?
So it's come to my attention twice before tonight and twice now tonight.
But you've never heard of live exports as an issue before tonight?
No, as a major priority, as a major priority for this electorate.
When it shut down the Northern Territory?
This is the New England.
2016, though, that affects us too.
I'm aware of that.
That affects us. We export live cattle.
All right, Cindy, your thoughts on this? I don't know why you can't say yes or no, mate. I honestly don't.
Okay, a quick answer. Oh, sorry. A quick answer. We actually don't have a policy on that, but what I will say is this, is that United Australia Party are backing the farmers 100%. All our policies are geared for rural and regional. We have been neglected, the farmers have been neglected and let down. That's why you have no water. So there's no way on this green earth would we just leave you sitting. None.
Okay, Tony, here.
I'd like to just go back to the last question about land clearing. A property next to ours came up for sale in the 70s. My father bought a section of it, another section went to a neighbour, or to another guy who had a farm nearby. He cut that block up into smaller blocks and sold them off, and a lot of people thought, shouldn't be breaking down a big farm into a small farm, into small hobby farms, and I don't know, he's the right to do that. I didn't have a problem with it. But before he did, he cut down all these 300-400-year-old spotted gum trees and sold them to a sawmill. He had the place he had the property for about 5 years. So I think that's exploitation. I don't think that Barnaby says he owns them, they're his. These things are habitat. You know, the next generation, the next people who own that farm for the next hundreds of years would have had those trees in their property. I don't think you've got a right to just destroy everything just because you own it.
Look, I'd like to respond to that if I may. Obviously, we come at this from different angles. If the community believes there's a community asset worth the community owning, then the community should purchase it. You can't say, look, even though you purchased that house, even though you believe that you own that house, that we now have a reason that you can no longer use your third bedroom because we deem it inappropriate. If you want to buy the third bedroom, buy the third bedroom. If you want to buy the spotted gum, go out and offer them a price and I'll sell it to you. But you can't just say, look, we decide that even though you paid this money for the land with the spotted gum, even though you're paying the rates on it, we, the government, decide that you no longer own it, and now the government owns it, and not only do we own it, we're not going to pay you for it. More than that, if you knock over our asset, we're going to send you to jail for it. I mean, that is just... That's why people in the land get so annoyed, because the government comes in and just presumes that it owns another person's private asset.
Does anyone else want to respond?
So we've got a conundrum here, right? We are witnessing the sixth great extinction of life on Earth at the moment.
That's vegetation fact.
Vegetation is critical to the healthy function of the water cycle, as is soil health. So far more water is stored in the landscape than is ever going to be stored in a dam, and it's much more resilient there. As to how we manage this transition, there are some difficult discussions and decisions to be made, and that's a change process that we have to go to. Now, whether or not government forces it or not, as Mr. Joyce is suggesting, I'm not hearing anyone saying that, but I am hearing people saying, how do we have this conversation? How do we turn the tide on the decline of the production of our landscape and our water security?
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I think we've got time for one more question, then another break. Come on down, mate. Hello, what's your name?
Hey, Paul. My name's Steve.
G'day, Steve. What's your question?
My question is specifically for Mr. Blakester. You seem pretty unable or unwilling to answer questions, so I'll give you a very simple one. You spent 12 years in management, senior management, employed by Greenpeace. What's the thing that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I'm really proud of that 12 years with the organisation, and I worked right around the world and particularly in the Pacific region. The work that I was most proud of was what we called the solutions work, and that included things like eco-forestry, sustainable fishing, and stopping things like whaling in the Southern Ocean. They were things I was particularly proud of. I started work on renewable energy back then. That's 21 years ago now, and I think it's even more of an opportunity. It's the biggest economic development project we've had in this region, $2 billion worth of renewable energy projects built in the last 8 years.
Right. Why do you ask about Greenpeace?
Well, I find it very unusual that you spent 12 years in senior management in a global organisation, yet there's nothing about that on any of your electorate material. Are you trying to hide that from the electorate?
No, not at all. It's on my website. It's in my career bio. It's on my LinkedIn profile.
Your electorate material. Why didn't you say anything about that on your website or your social media platforms?
It's on my website.
No, it's not. It's not on. It's not on your Adam Blakester for New England website.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, apparently it's there.
So is the 6 years I spent at KPMG. So is the 6 years that I was financial controller for Michael Willisey.
All you had on
so
there
is my
was
role
your
as CEO of
taxation
NAPCAN.
background.
So is...
All you had was your taxation background.
No, there's a full bio there.
And,
okay.
Yeah, I think they're trying to hide it.
I don't know what you saw. You say it's there. They scream from the background. Yvonne.
This actually harks a little bit back to why I chose to stand as a Labor candidate rather than as an independent, because I've been asked that. I joined the Labor Party 3 years ago, and people sort of asked me, why aren't you standing as an independent? And I think by declaring your political alliance, it gives people an indication of where you stand politically. So I'm a progressive, and it's out there. No one needs to do any kind of research into where I stand politically. I'm a progressive person. That's a main reason why I'm not standing as an independent, but declare my political leanings, if you will, or how I view it, how I view issues like what do we do with
managing our biodiversity? Or, you know, should we pay for that one room, this mythical 3-bedroom room? This is a very, very simplistic little analogy there, I'm sorry, because here in Australia, actually, mine income, because you do not own what is underneath your land. So that is how our property law is. So to have a little simplistic thing is that the government can come in and sort of decide that 1 bedroom now no longer belongs to you. That's really a simplistic little analogy.
Not really, because you see the trees that we're talking about are not under the ground, they're actually on top of it. And the other issue there is we've had a lot of issues, not in this electorate, it's a little bit in this electorate, but definitely next door, about concerns about what is actually under the ground. And I think there are a lot of people who want a greater security of their property rights to determine their future for what happens on their land. And if you actually go back into the history of the Torrens title system, you'll find that initially the hydrocarbonous material was actually vested with the landholder. It's been divested in another form of socialism over a period of years, so that the coal, the gas, the oil then becomes owned by the state, and that's where it leads, in some instances, to a whole range of problems.
OK, there's plenty more questions we have here. I also want to telegraph, now it's bad TV hosting to give people time to think about this, but I want an answer from all of you to this question, which is I've had the pleasure of being here at this election, the last election, been an observer of this place, like so many who care about politics for a while. And I want you all to take a couple of minutes to think about this, and we'll get an answer on the other side of the break. What is it about politics in New England that seems to be so passionate, I'll say, so aggressive at times, so personal at times, because it's something that seems to be not particularly unique, but particularly special to this part of Australia. And we'll get an answer from everyone about what that is in a sec here, live from Tamworth on Paul Murray Live. Of questions to ask. We've only got a few minutes left, so let's race through it as fast as possible, as we have representatives from the Nats, the United Australia Party, Independents, Labor Party and Greens. All right, what is your name and what's your question?
Hello, Paul. My name's Heidi. My question's to the whole panel. Obviously tonight we're hearing a lot of fear and anxiety amongst the New England community about their industries being shut down and what that means to them. And what that really means is people not being able to afford to pay their bills. It's people not being able to afford to put food on their table. Now, it gets quite emotional for a lot of us here on the New England. You were talking about the passion before, but it's a serious issue. So it actually bothers me that we have candidates here tonight that they've only heard about this twice. That's really quite concerning. That's my first point. My second point is, you start to shut down those industries, where are people going to work? So my question to the panel is, how would you, in the hallways of Canberra, and who would you go to say, right, we need to bring these government departments out into the New England because these people now have no jobs? Okay. So where would you start?
All right, Tony, let's start with you. There's a few different things in there. You can take it from jobs to the area, or you can get to cost of living, whatever I suppose, whichever way you want to interpret it. But Tony, we'll start with you, and then we'll come up the table.
I don't have a problem with decentralisation. Government departments, state government departments have moved to Orange. I think there was some issue with forcing. Sometimes you have expertise that doesn't want to move, but the gun registries in Murwillumbah, and that's all those moving government departments to regional areas obviously helps decentralisation and helps people in country areas can do those jobs as well as people in the cities.
Maybe if you don't mind me sharpening to pick one for everyone, which is about people being able to pay their bills. How do you change that in the next
bills?
3 years?
All bills. Well, I mean, power bills. OK, Power bills have gone up a lot in the last few years. There's been inquiries into this. One, it was by the too much money being put in the so-called gold plating of the grid. That was the number one thing that did it. Then we've got this uncertainty in Canberra about what's going to happen with energy policy. So no one's prepared to put money in and invest in new generation capacity because no one knows where they stand with it. So we've had the coalition just stuck on, no, we're going to build coal-fired power stations, we're going to stick with 18th century, 19th century technology and not move on to a renewable grid, which everybody knows is popular. It's also cheaper.
All right, Cindy?
Yeah, as far as the power bills go, we have to get away from privatisation. We've got to get it back under government control. Like, everyone says free trade, great, all that. And whilst I understand...
Sorry, feel free to keep it. Just, fellas, if you want to keep the yak, you can go out or listen to the people actually talking. Go for it.
Privatisation, while I understand why they go free trade, hey, all that, it was much more controlled. The prices were much more controlled when it was government-owned. They're our utilities, not someone who's got the highest bid.
Yeah, but
there.
to the general person on the New England, that's all, wobbly-tobbly talk. Can I just say that? All we care about is how we're going to pay our power bills and how we're going to put food on the table. Like, what jobs?
Right. Adam, this question's changed about 16 times, so you can take whichever one you want on it. Go for it.
Look,
no disrespect, but there was a lot in there.
Power prices have doubled in the time of the last two terms of coalition government. Doubled. Gas prices have risen by a factor of 2 to 3, depending on where you sit in the gas grid. It's a really serious issue. The lowest cost for new power is now renewable. That's unequivocal, but that's new. That's not existing. And existing power, these are great big machines, they wear out over time, and we have a number of power stations that are wearing out and need to be replaced. So we'll see a transition to renewables in that regard, but that doesn't solve the affordability picture. The missing piece in Australia that other major economies have done, that Australia hasn't, is energy efficiency. That's upgrading the efficiency of our built environment, our homes, buildings like this, and every item that uses energy. Combining those two together will bring power prices down.
Yvonne?
This, to me, it's all about paying our bills, and it's one of the reasons why I actually wanted to stand up for politics, because that's economics 101. We can talk about all sorts of mythical economics out there, but it is really all about us being able to pay our bills. There are issues like power prices, and people sort of say, it's too expensive. So Labor will, it's two-tiered. It's what we need to do immediately, because it's all very well to sort of say what we're going to be doing in 10 years' time or even 5 years' time. At the moment, you need to pay your bills. So one issue is that there is so much confusion, the standard prices all over the place. By regulating that all these private companies have one set standard price, there's already one place where you can look at minimising. But on jobs, because it is also about jobs to be able to pay your bills, it's bringing back services that have been drastically cut. No one wants to come and set up a business in any of our regional centres if we do not have good hospital services, if we do not have good educational services. And that also brings people into our region. Okay. We need to have people who can actually not only pay their bills, but shop in our shops.
All right. Barnaby Joyce?
OK. There is about 124,000 families now who, when the kids go home, they cannot turn on the television because there is no power in the house. They have no fridge because there is no power. They have no washing machine because there is no power. They have no electric heater, electric air conditioner or electric stove. And I believe this is completely and utterly wrong, that this is happening to these people, and they should be at the forefront of any decision-making process. Australia used to have the cheapest power in the world. We now have the dearest power in the world. And the more and more free power we seem to get, the dearer the power bill seems to go. We should be having divestiture powers that have the capacity to break up oligopoly or monopoly positions in the power market. But they were voted down by the Labor Party. The Labor Party did not support them. And also, I disagree that that we say that renewables, that coal-fired power is not that is too dear. This is ridiculous, and it runs against the fact that China has over 1,000 coal-fired power plants. They're currently building a further 132. Australia has in total 22, and we're closing them down. When we closed down Hazelwood, our power went through the roof. Now they're going to close down. Liddell, and we know what's going to happen to our power bills there. So, unfortunately, we've got to have the reality pill and get back to further baseload power.
OK, thank you very much for your question. Thank you to all of the candidates. You're going to get to ask the last question here, so I apologise to everyone else. You're going to get to ask the last question. But before we get there, I've been doing this for 10 years on the telly, and I've covered everything from the Bennelong by-election that had plenty of sharp teeth in it last time when it was Tony Windsor versus Barnaby Joyce. I've been all over the country, multiple elections, and I've seen plenty of things that are razor thin, 4/5 of bugger all, and I've seen stuff that's 65% primary vote. But there's something about this electorate that plays politics a certain way, and for people watching at home, they might be not quite used to sort of a level about that seems some pretty sharp elbows in all of this. I want to ask you all, why is politics played this way here, where it seems like something... There's a lot of aggro in the air here, Tony, and I'm saying about everyone at all times at some point, you've all had a crack at each other pretty hard in one way or another. Why?
Can I start?
Well,
no, we'll go to Tony first, and we'll work up to you.
I don't think it's always been the case. Tony Windsor was a very popular independent representative here for many years. Where Tony made his mistake was with the Greens and the Gillard government and Rob Oaktrock and Tony, they negotiated a price on carbon to reduce our carbon pollution in the atmosphere. And in that period of operation, our emissions went down. Barnaby was one of the chief agitators against that. $100 lamb roast, all this nonsense. I'd like to ask Barnaby one question.
No, we're not playing that game.
Do you believe...
Yeah.
After you answer mine. I'm a science teacher. I teach high school physics. I know how science works. I'm not a climate scientist, but I know the consensus is that 98% of scientists believe climate change is an existential threat to humanity. We're on track for 4 degrees of warming. Barnaby, do you think climate change is... Do you believe what the climate scientists are saying?
I'm also an accountant, and I deal with people who can't afford their power bills. And
that's not the question.
And I will tell you exactly that if the climate is changing, and I believe it is, there is nothing that is going to happen in a room in Canberra where 76 people stick up their hand and say aye, and others say nay, that's going to have any effect on the climate whatsoever. But it can send you broke. It can definitely do that, because I have a very good understanding about politics. And if you believe that people in Canberra can change the temperature of the globe, then move a motion to make it rain and we'll all be much better off.
Cindy, about why politics is played so tough here, and it's been played tough here for a very long time.
Sorry?
Why is politics so tough here?
Because we're a tough crowd. We're tough people, we're passionate, and we believe in our country, regional areas. And by the way, I have to stick up for Tony Windsor. He was a gentleman politician and I loved him. Right. As did my mum and dad. And you said...
Yeah, OK, but also, did you notice that if you keep asking the question, you're going to deny a voter a question?
And Tony...
So I get it, it's good for Facebook, and that's what you're planning to do, but this lady is one of your voters, right? You can get on Facebook or you can talk to her. Your choice. Adam, why is politics played the way it is here?
Look, I moved back 13 years ago and politics wasn't like that 13 years ago. Politics changed when Mr Abbott and Mr Joyce changed it.
No, when the Greens changed it. The Greens changed it.
So there's a question for voters here, and it's not only in this electorate, it's a question right around the country, which is, does good governance look like a pub brawl? Does it look like a shouting match? I've worked on hundreds of boards and committees. I get hired to facilitate good decision-making processes. I have never been hired to create a brawl. I've never been in a decision-making process where shouting at each other gets a better result. And that's a choice for this electorate. And thankfully, we're still a free country. You all get a vote and you'll get to choose whether you want another brawl or you want to have good governance.
And just one last time, do you have an opinion on live exports yet?
I could also do some work around active listening. I think I've answered that one, Paul.
Just wait for the text from Alex Turnbull. All right, Yvonne?
Does Alex, he got a view on it?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he does.
Okay, all right.
Who's Alex?
This electorate is just filled with people who are very passionate, are very engaged. This makes it interesting, makes it very interesting politics here. Argy-bargy can be good because conflict is not necessarily a bad thing, because from that you do come up with solutions. What I have found that in this area is this increasing lack of confidence in our future, is this fear that we're just hanging in by our fingernails. What is it going to be like for our children? So that is what that's really what we're talking about, is about our future. Which direction do we want to go on? You know, even from live export, and as everyone knows, I'm not sitting on the fence for this. I am into phasing it out, particularly sheep. Particularly, I think the sheep live export in the northern summer is quite problematic. Okay. I've had long discussions with this because my husband is actually in animal health science, because of the temperatures. Cattle is probably not quite that is. But you know where we stand on is phasing it out. Because yes, you can't stop it because people have planned their business plan on it. But New England is very interesting. I mean,
I love it. I'm saying I love it, but there's people watching it now.
People come up and they're really pro something or really anti something. And the most interesting thing here is asking, why do you think that? And to sort of tell them, this is what I think.
All right. Okay,
we have to come to a consensus.
All right, the bell apparently doesn't work anymore, but for everyone, including the host, but
we're getting into it.
You know, who knows? There's I don't know why the bell doesn't work anymore. Barnaby, apparently you're all to blame.
Well, the reason New England is the way it is because you ask people where they're from, they won't say they're from New South Wales. They say, I'm from the New England. We say that because we have this distaste for being part of Sydney. New South Wales is turning to the state of Sydney, not to the state of New South Wales. So we believe in our area. And in 1967, we actually had a referendum in the New England to become our own state. And we were knocked out because they put Newcastle in the referendum. And we actually even had, well, they did. And we actually have our own flag. It's a rampant line. You can go see a copy of it. It's up at Tenterfield. So this is, it's absolutely implicit in who we are, that we're New Englanders. We're not New South Welshmen or New South Welsh women. We're New Englanders, and we're absolutely proud of it. And we play our politics hard because we believe that all the rest are just there to make up the numbers.
All right, thank you very much, Barnaby, Adam, Yvonne, Tony and Cindy. I'll make an executive call. We're going to drop an ad break right now on Sky News and on Win, meaning we'll get 2 out before we are finished. We ran out of time for an answer, but give me a question anyway. Hello, what's your name?
Robin.
Hello, Robin. What was your question?
Gardasil vaccine prevents cancer of the cervix. On the 27th of January 2006, Barnaby Joyce opposed the free provision of Gardasil vaccine. He was quoted as saying, "Don't put something out that gives any 12-year-old daughter of mine a licence to be promiscuous." Does Mr Joyce still hold this view? And to the other candidates, would you ever consider opposing a medically approved, scientifically backed life-saving vaccine?
Fast as possible.
That was the most atrocious that article was one of the most atrocious misquotings of me. My father's a vet, my mother's a physio. I had to deal for years after that reporter put that out. It is absolute garbage. Of course I support something that is going to save people's lives. The test group of the Gardasil thing, the Gardasil issue, so much for promiscuity, were a group of nuns, as if I believed they were promiscuous. Yet, you know, this...
All right, guys, I'm so out of time.
You've got to understand, just because you read it doesn't mean I said it. There's the first thing.
On that note, we say goodbye from New England. Thank you to all the candidates. Plenty more in a sec from Tamworth.